been infringed. Of course, the level of violation, human rights violations, varies from area to area. And the sacrifices of the Afghan nation after the 1978 communist coup destined them to the uncertainty and put them under various hardships. Let all of us cooperate in order for this human tragedy to come to an end. In discussing the Afghan situation in a gathering like this, I do not wish to invite any confrontation. We Afghans have accused each other enough for the past 4 years. I do not want to bring up the past. None of us can change the past. After all, we are not in a courtroom to be judged for our deeds. We will leave that for the Afghan people and the future. I'm sure they will scrutinize each and every one of our actions committed yesterday, today, and tomorrow. If we consider the interests of our nation, our talks must be constructive, not destructive, and fraternal, not fratricidal. Dear fellow Afghans, let us put all our efforts and time in quest for a peaceful settlement. One of the many undesirable effects of war for the past 4 years is the loss of trust among us. How can the inter-Afghan trust be rebuilt? Let us lean on each other's shoulders. Let us unitedly preserve our national unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, and work for peace, security, and the reestablishment of administrative unity of Afghanistan. Enough is enough. We fired enough shells and harsh words at each other. If it was the interference of foreign circles, you and I allowed it. If in the past force was used against you, it was only because you would have done the same had you been in the other's place. We must agree that state sovereignty never dies. The international community understands and accepts that. In order to have preserved Afghanistan as a single political entity and an independent country, one had to defend it against outside intervention and interferences. Even you would have defended the defenseless and deprived people of Kabul. They had committed no crime. In the fight against the Soviets, we all defended our homeland from a single united front. Isn't it disgraceful today that we are sitting in 40 separate seats? One of you should have represented all of us, and you should have raised the voice of your heroic homeland. If a single voice had been heard, the world would have known once again that Afghanistan is a united and an undividable entity. Dear countrymen, do you know what had happened? You and I were once the heroes of the 80s. Today they call us the terrorists and drug traffickers of the 90s. Still, it is not late. We must realize that our survival and growth lie in our unity, and our annihilation and decline would be rooted in our division. That is the tradition, a legacy of our forefathers that has saved Afghanistan during the time of national crisis. Why must we further allow our destiny to be determined by others? If you and I own this land, and if Afghanistan belongs only to the Afghans, then the future political system, its leadership, and the government must be elected under an Afghan roof by us, by authorized representatives of our nation. That is the free will which is the source of national sovereignty. Yours, mine, ours. I agree that the present government may not enjoy the support of the entirety of the Afghan population. There are still groups who have not yet joined the government. However, what is highly needed for the Afghans in the current situation is the cessation of hostilities and the start of dialogue. This can be ensured through a phased political process under the auspices of the UN. Let us look around the globe. Can we find an internal armed conflict resolved by a procedure other than just mentioned? Civilized human societies have accepted dialogue and negotiation as the only way to resolve their differences. We must all accept necessary compromises for the salvation of our people and our homeland. 2.5 years ago, a few called for immediate resignation of the president. The president accepted in principle and notified the UN mission of his intention. He offered for creation of a mechanism to which power should be transferred. It was declined and military means were deployed instead. This ironically failed to bring the desired changes. Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the subcommittee, dear Afghan sisters and brothers, There is a need for a peace plan on which the UN could work among the sides to the conflict. To facilitate the process, some ideas could be presented in the form of a blueprint. We believe a 4-stage peace plan could be the basis of such an idea. First stage, the convening of a gathering of authorized representatives of all sides to prepare for a high-level meeting of the heads of all sides and centers of power. Stage 2, the meeting of the heads of all sides, centers of power, as well as prominent figures from the Afghan intelligentsia, from within and outside Afghanistan, to form a Supreme Council. The Supreme Council will assign different commissions on security force, national army, drafting of the Constitution, drafting rules for political parties, electoral law, and one on the creation of a parliament. Stage 3, declaration of general ceasefire, and within 6 months to a year from the beginning of the process, transfer of power from President Rabbani to the Supreme Council, endorsement of the draft of the Constitution by the Supreme Council, and then election of an interim president from among the members of the Supreme Council for a period perhaps not more than a year. Stage 4, convening of either a parliament acting as a constituent assembly or a Loya Jirga Grand Assembly under the supervision of the United Nations. The assembly will elect a president and ratify the Constitution, the law of political parties, and the electoral law. The holding of general election could not be ruled out. If you believe the problem is in the transfer of power, this is the easiest way of doing it. It is a matter of 6 months to a year. In the lifetime of a nation, this is not a considerable period of time. What I just elaborated is ideas for a framework of a peace plan. We can all review it, negotiate, change it to suit our national priorities and interests. Any transfer of power without adequate preparation would have fatal and catastrophic results. Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, I hope this meeting will contribute to alleviating the sufferings of the Afghan people and the early establishment of peace and regional stability in the interests of our nation and of those of the region. I hope the subcommittee will consider the usefulness of adopting the following points to be recommended to the United States administration. 1, adequate support should be granted to the United Nations in order to enable its mission to renew its efforts with a more clearer prospect. To do this, the UN mission should prepare a blueprint of a peace plan and negotiate it with and any side who, in one way or another, can contribute in the restoration of peace and the strengthening of national unity, law and order in the country. The will of the people through appropriate mechanism not alien to the Afghan society should be given paramount and decisive consideration. 2, the United States should come up with a clearer stand using its moral and political pressures in order to put an end to the foreign interferences in Afghanistan. 3, the United States certainly need to be adequately aware about the rapid strategic and political developments in the area, which has turned Afghanistan into a hotspot with the potential of becoming the source of serious political and strategic imbalance. The U.S. should restore a kind of political presence in the capital, Kabul. This will also help ensuring a better U.S.-Afghan understanding and cooperation towards the consolidation of political process in the country. 4, the U.S. and other donor countries may re-evaluate the humanitarian needs of today's Afghanistan. More appropriate channels for providing such assistance should be sought. 5, while the Afghan nation is keen to recover its administrative unity and establish political institutions on the basis of democratic principles in tolerant and progressive Islam, securing the rule of law, civil, political, cultural, social and economic rights of its people, the United States and other developed countries should provide all possible assistance. Mr. Chairman, let me end by quoting from an American expert of Afghanistan, Professor Thomas Gutierrez's testimony before a committee of the U.S. House of Representatives, 9th of May 1996, quote, while the United States is appropriately assisting those nations which have emerged from the ashes of the Soviet Union, let it not neglect that nation that suffered such devastating losses on the free world's behalf. On the last battle of the Cold War, the U.S. should assist the Afghans in the war. The U.S. assisted the Afghans in the war. Let it assist in the pursuit of peace, stability, and reconstruction, unquote. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Foreign Minister. And as you can see during your testimony, Hank Brown has been transformed into Dana Rohrabacher, and a miracle. And frankly, perhaps we need to look for miracles, and that's what we are here today, to try to find a way to turn chaos and bloodshed into peace. And I'm sorry, it's just that Hank Brown and myself are here as far as the members of the committee. But we will be activists, and we will work with the members of the House on my side